Looking for an approval of the agenda. We do have an agenda addition from Rhonda Porter, a request for equipment, and then on the minutes, November 20th are the only minutes presented, so we'll scratch the 27th.
I'd move approval with the addition.
We have a motion to approve as changed by Commissioner Campbell, a second by Commissioner Wayland. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Citizens to be heard. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on anything not on the agenda? Anyone here? Seeing none, we'll move into the approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Wayland
Second.
and a second by Commissioner Gross. Get those passed around. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. The minutes from November 20th.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Gross, a second by Commissioner Haney. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. Thank you. Okay, so for our employee recognitions this morning, we have 3 people. Gail Burnside, Social Services. Gail, will you come up? Good morning, Gail.
Morning.
This plaque today is given to you in recognition of your service to Clay County and the citizens for 20 years. Thank you so very much for what you've done. And Rhonda's here. Say a couple words.
Yes, I'm very thrilled to be able to come and talk about Gail on behalf of her supervisor, Amy Amundsen, and myself. Gail has been an amazing asset to our agency. She's been with us 20 years. She's started out in Child Protective Services, so you've heard me talk over the years about the difficulties. So somebody who can be in Child Protective Services for 20 years, pretty amazing. Gail does the licensing of our foster homes, and so she is pulled in a multitude of directions, and as you've heard me talk before, foster homes, you know, that licensing process can be pretty arduous, and recruitment, and so she does an amazing job. She started a foster parent support group over the last couple of years, which has been awesome. We've needed that in our county. So thank you, Gail, so much. It's an honor to congratulate you on your 20 years. Thank you. Cheryl Sapp. Cheryl, this plaque is given to you in grateful recognition of 20 years of dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you. Hello. I would like to say that there's been so much experience in the 20 years that Cheryl's provided public health services that I had to write them all down. But I will say right now, she is our disease prevention and control coordinator, which means she manages the disease, including TB for Clay County. So we rely on her heavily for that. She also works with the perinatal hepatitis B program. She provides school nursing in the Hidden School. She has, she's one of our primary contacts for emergency preparedness. She managed the H1N1 clinic for Clay County Public Health. She covers the juvenile detention center, so she's worked with some of you there. She provides our clinic services 2 to 3 days a week. She has done the PCA program. She did the Child T Checkup outreach program, and I could go on and on, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for all that you do.
Thank you.
Herbert Nelson. Good morning. This plaque is given to you in grateful recognition for the 20 years of service to Clay County and its citizens. Thank you for all that you've done over the years. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for putting up with me.
20 years ago, Herb decided to retire from our office. How did that work out for you? seriously, the last 20 years, we've utilized him over here at Court Security as a part-time officer and or deputy, and he has been probably our best go-to guy. He comes whenever we need him in a pinch, and we really appreciate being able to use you after your first service with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
Item number 2 is the reveal of the redesigned Clay County website. Mark Sloan, good morning.
Morning, I have pens.
Pens, thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, good morning. We're here with something kind of exciting. This is Marie Fournier. She is our e-government administrator, and she's responsible for our website. And she was she was the person that helped with the redesign and make it happen. Our website has been like it has been for the last several years. And one of the things we wanted to do is redesign it, make it a little more user-friendly. As things change over time, things get stale, new styles come into play, different things become more important than they were. All that kind of stuff happens, and we had the opportunity to redesign our site, so we did that by putting together a committee of staff members, and we sat down and looked at what we had and what we would like to change, and what things were working and what weren't, and what kind of differences we wanted to do. And it was actually a pretty long process to come up with some ideas on how it should be. And once that was done, we worked with our vendor over many months of time to put those pieces into play. And it culminated last 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, with training of the people here that edit on the new site and how it functioned. And as of yesterday, our new site became active. This is what it used to look like. This is what it looked like right up until yesterday. It was the blue one with the big picture and the big buttons on the top. And now we have this is how we look. It's much cleaner and much, I think it's much easier to read. And it's got a little different color scheme. We went with some different styles and tried to address all the concerns we'd come up with over the years. I think one of the big factors we had with the redesign was the focus on the mobile platform.
Right.
That's a big piece to make sure that however we're delivering this website and its thousands of pages of information is done in such a way that people can consume it in whatever platform they're using, whether it's a computer or a phone or anything like that. So,
Because it definitely was cumbersome with a cell phone prior.
yes, it was. And yeah, we looked at a lot of ways to make that easier, so that's what we're trying to make happen here. Marie, you want to tell us about some of the things we've changed?
Sure. First of all, we have it's a little bit wider now so that there's a little bit more real estate to work with. And we added our little favicon up there. You can see it up in the,
Right there.
previously it just had the CP for Civic Plus, and we've added our own little play icon. And up in the upper left, rather than have the logo, the trend is more to have more of a site identifier, so we've added Clay County and we put Minnesota on because there are several
Clay
counties. So we did that, and then the top global navigation, that's all that area there, it's a similar content, but we've made the search area a little bit bigger and made it a little friendlier with how can we help you rather than just search.
Right.
And those items will stay. The search, the site ID, and the global navigation will stay so that it's on there all the time. Then we have got the graphic buttons across there. You can see there are 7 of them. Below that, we have the spotlight area, and that is an area we can use to spotlight things that are of heavy interest in the county and different things like that. And then right below that, we've got the news and events area. And we've changed that up a little bit so that you can get a quick look at all the popular links, the news flashes, and the calendar items in one little spot, as opposed to clicking on tabs like we had before. The popular links part, if you'll recall, on our old site, we had left navigation, and that was kind of the trend at the time. Well, now they've kind of gone away from that, so we've provided those important links under the popular links section right there. And then we have what we refer to as the footer, and there you'll see our logo, and of course clicking on that takes you home at any time. We have our contact us information with our contact directory and all that sort of thing. Then we have some helpful links, which these items that are in the footer will remain on all the pages. So we've duplicated some of the helpful links so that they will be available all the time. And then the helpful numbers for the county.
I do want to comment quickly, excuse me, Commissioner Gross. Yesterday, when I had heard you were going to go live, I looked at that, and two of the things that really stuck out to me is the helpful numbers, because oftentimes that was tricky before to kind of navigate, and you didn't really know who, and so to simplify it to that, and really if someone called the wrong number from there, we could probably transfer them, correct?
Right.
And then the events piece, because a lot of times if someone knew that a meeting was going to happen, it was kind of hard to see where that would be, and so to have a clear information place for that is important. Commissioner Gross?
Excuse me. I noticed on the contact us, being an old post office guy, don't we have a P.O. box for a mailing address?
We do.
Yes.
We could certainly add that.
Well, I mean, that's what our mailing address is.
Right. Well, we put this address on there specifically that way so it's navigable, you know, if somebody wanted to come.
So when you click on it on a mobile platform, it could take you to
It will bring
the
you-
maps,
Yes.
the navigation.
There's a get directions link down below there.
Right here that actually does that piece.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the reason. But we could add the P.O. box and if we wanted to.
Well, I guess I'm just, you know, when it says contact us, if someone wants to write a letter to us, we should give them the right address, shouldn't we? I would think, my thought.
Okay. All right.
Okay, then we'll take a quick look at one of the interior pages. What we just looked at was the main home page, but then all the interior pages will look very similar to this. You'll notice that the top site ID, the navigation, the search remains. Another thing that we added was the little, you see those little A's there? Those are text sizing tools. Now you can obviously size things with your browser as well, but that's just a little added feature for people. Another thing that we changed was the left navigation. We have implemented what they refer to as an accordion concept rather than a flyout concept. And so you just, if there's more than one item under a given title, you click the little arrow and it drops down like that. And then to retract it, you just click the arrow again and it retracts.
And that's mostly for mobile. It's to make it easier to navigate on those type of platforms.
And then down at the bottom of each page, we have placed the graphic buttons that we saw on the home page. Those are on the bottom of every page, so they're handy for everybody. And then, of course, we have the footer on every page. So that's kind of a quick look at the new redesign.
Any questions? I just quick pulled it up on my cell phone as you were walking through to see how it was different, and it's a lot cleaner. I really appreciate that. So
Good.
thank you. Well, and I also the new color scheme is nice. I'm sure that went into, you had
There
some
was a
discussion on that.
lot of discussion on the color scheme, the color palette. One of the big changes we made between them, well, here, I'll read quick back and forth, is the background was dark before, now it's light.
Yep.
It makes it a little more easier to read. And also, Marie keeps a track of a lot of things, like how the screen readers can deal with the pages, because
Okay.
we have to have those type of capabilities for people with impairments. So it makes some of those things work better. So, yeah, it's a lot of work.
So, the background photo, which I assume is one of the bridges in Moorhead, correct?
It's the one on Wall Street.
So is that, last time you kind of alternated photos throughout the year, is that something that you will do as well?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, those can be changed out for the seasons and so forth.
Okay. Well, great job. Thank you.
Nice, thanks.
We appreciate it. Good work, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 is the update and request for the final approval for the detox grant. Steve Larson, Kathy McKay, Troy Almanson. Is Rhonda coming up? We have some other people here. Mary's here as well. As they're coming up, if you recall, this is something that we, in the last maybe 2 months, I had heard about and have been working feverishly to get something together, and I have reported on the progress, but these guys have really put in a lot of work to make this happen, so thank you for your efforts on this. Troy, are you gonna start?
Sure, I can. Well, like you did say, Madam Chair, we have been putting many hours into writing this grant. It is a competitive grant, and it needs to be there by the 14th at 4 o'clock. So we are finalizing things probably today and getting it sent. In front of you is some highlights of the project and some pictures of the current architect drawings of the outside of the building.
Just a moment, I want to make sure that everyone has this. Clay County Regional Detox Facility Grant update. I don't think Jim or Steve.
Yeah, I said them.
Yep,
Oh,
right there.
it's right next to Jim. Thank you.
Does Kevin have one?
Yep, their packets.
Two
So
sets.
Okay.
grant. There's another one with a paper clip on the back. That's what that is. Thank you. Okay. We're good now. Sorry, I just wanted to be on the same page.
No, that's good. Okay, so the current plan would be to, that the grant would be for up to $5 million that they would award. And we have up to 5 years to use that money. When we look at the facility and designing of it, it's going to be on the current Clay County campus, and it's going to be a 2-story building. We're going to be eligible to apply for a withdrawal management license this spring, and that program is going to be on the first floor of the building. Then we're also looking at the detoxification program, which is what our current license is. And that would be on the second floor of the building, and that would be a lot of your commitment holds, a lot of court holds where somebody's waiting for a treatment bed, you don't want them to go home, it's risky, you want to keep their sobriety going until they can get into a treatment program. So at this time, the estimated cost is at about $10,442,000. So we were looking at, if we were awarded the $5 million, a difference of $5,442,000. Our operational costs, which is going to be county funding at the current level, we hope to keep, is at $2,558,000. When we're looking at these different programs and what we're doing with the withdrawal management, we are going to have the ability to bill MA for client stay. And we're not quite sure how we're going to set the cost of it right now, but the amount you're allowed to bill is quite a bit higher than what we currently bill. So I think we're at about $320 a day right now, and I believe it was at about $520 for the MA billing. So We have to work those details out a little bit, but that would be some of the additional revenue we'd have. In speaking to some of our contracted agencies, they've kind of said, if you build it, we will come. You know, they have more clients for us. We've discussed a fee increase, and we've also thrown out the idea of a bed purchase plan going to the counties, which we did start with Ottertail County after I started. So we're thinking about doing that. We are, and this facility would be a regional facility. That is how the grant is written. We are the only detox for many miles. There's one in Granite Falls, there's one in Wilmer, and there's another small one in Nevis, Minnesota. The difference is we're a locked facility, and that comes in handy when counties are looking to place somebody until they can get to treatment. We did get 20 letters of support, you know, from law enforcement, FM ambulance, and many other counties that would use us and have used us over the years. And that's kind of, I think, just a quick overview of the project as it currently stands.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the price piece, because this is the first time this board will have seen that price. We worked with Klein McCarthy and construction engineers, and the goal right now was to get an application so we could meet that deadline. And both our county administrator and I and you have talked with construction engineers about areas where we could tweak to save some dollars if it needed to be. So there's areas that we've identified where we could cut if we had to, but I think to start with something that really answered the grants question for what the needs would be, that was our goal.
Yeah.
That is correct, Madam Chair. I've had numerous conversations with Scott Fettig, and there are certain things that we have looked at, whether it's the size, the height of different buildings, the foundations that we have. We can make some alternate hallways that connect to the jail. There's certainly things that we can look at, and I look this very similar to when the law enforcement center, for example, came to this board for the first time. We went from there and we downsized some different areas, and we certainly want to make sure that all the needs continue to be met by detox, but there are some areas that we certainly can look to save some dollars.
I know you highlighted the 20 letters of support, and both the sheriff and the sheriff-elect would have been here this morning, but they're at a conference, and they also expressed their gratitude and understood the need for something like this, if it were to get to that.
And Madam Chair, too, in addition, part of the requirement of this grant is to utilize a region-wide, and so that's why they've reached out to these different counties to look for that support. So,
Questions?
That include Cass County as well?
Correct. We have the two contracts with Southeast and VA.
Okay.
So they will continue to send their clients to us.
Questions?
Where is this located at? I see you got a drawing here. Where is this attached to the building over the Family Service Center, or this?
It would actually be adjacent right to the jail with, what's the word?
Vestibule?
Yeah, with the vestibule, but in one of the green areas.
The northwest corner.
Northwest corner,
Yeah,
correct.
corner of 9th Street and 9th Avenue.
Very good, thank you.
So it's currently looked at as one of the site locations for a future pod.
Correct.
that's correct, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and just for the board's information, I've reached out to Julie and Sheriff and Sheriff-elect to kind of update them on the project. In working with Klein McCarthy, the two additional pods that we've shown historically, from that standpoint, Scott Fettig has indicated that was more of placeholders. As part of this planning, we did look ahead as far as where we would place those additional, the pod, and so we would not be losing that pod space. There might be some additional parking that we may utilize in that spot, but and I talked to Julie Sabat, and from that standpoint, there's a lot of actually some positive things about shifting the 2 pods the way that the plan has in place.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I just want to make sure we recognize the team. So we had Rhonda and Pat. These are all of the people you see in front, Jamie, Troy, Mary, that put lots of hours in writing this, or it would never have been able to be nailed today. And we also, Dakota Medical Foundation also allowed us to use Ann Malmberg, who is, she heads the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Group. And so they graciously allowed her to, she did a lot of editing for us, she did a lot of research, and getting information for the grant. There was a lot of detail involved. And then, of course, Mary did the financial stuff as well as the formatting and all the extra things that needed to be done. So it was a huge team effort, and without the whole team, this would have never been, we would not have made the timeline to send it in.
Commissioner Campbell?
Yeah, I thank you for all of you for doing the work you've done, and anytime we have an opportunity to improve our facilities to the tune of a $5 million grant, we need to do that. In terms of the amount over and above that, you know, I think there's plenty of time to review how that can be handled, and I'm assuming that there's potential for additional revenue streams coming through, so all those things we can certainly deal with later on. The important thing, I think, is to get this grant submitted by the 14th.
Yep.
Correct. And go from there, because obviously the current location of our detox is something that's not real desirable. And like I mentioned before, we've got a detox in the same building that we have Head Start, and to me that's probably not the greatest of things to have. So.
And since we're talking about the location that you're currently in, I think there's some, that would be transferring to this if we were to build. And so there's some area over in the Family Service Center that could be used for additional revenue if we lease that out to other programs. But just briefly, having young kids that came with me to a meeting one evening and unfortunately had to observe an individual going into detox, and it got kind of messy, and that person needed to be transferred right over to the jail. That is not the best way to help those individuals, and so to be able to have a facility that could better serve the needs while also protecting some of these younger kids from observing that, I think is a good thing. But I agree with Commissioner Campbell. Anytime there's $5 million on the table, you work hard to see if you can be awarded that grant, and you definitely have worked hard, so thank you.
Oh, yeah, and there's, Madam Chair, there are a few documents that we listed that need to be signed by you today. So I think 1 or 2 of them need to be notarized as well. So
one needs to be notarized.
One of them, okay. So we'll need to get those
Have we already
signatures.
approved the grant application?
We've not. We've approved going forward for the work, but
Okay.
today we need to approve.
I'd move that our board sign the grant application for the
Okay.
facility.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Campbell and a second by Commissioner Wayland. Further discussion? We just need one motion today.
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can.
Great work.
Great work. Rhonda, do you want to do your agenda addition?
Yes, that'd be great, thank you.
You want to? Yeah. can I take the time?
Thank you for allowing me to add this agenda addition. I'm not sure if anything, oh, it looks like you did get a copy of
We do have the
what I'm
agenda-
requesting.
Yep, the information.
Okay, so I'm looking at, you've heard me talk before about the difficulties that our child protection unit are having with turnover and workload and the complexity of the cases. So I'm working with our management team to address some of those issues. And one piece to that is trying to make our staff a little bit more mobile. The ability to work out in the field, the ability to work when they're sitting over here at court, perhaps waiting for court hearings. The ability to, again, just be able to work off campus more effectively and efficiently. I'd like to purchase those staff laptops. I've worked with the IT department and the management team on what would be the best devices for them to have as they work out in the field and then come back to their offices to work. So I've laid out what those costs would be, including cases and a projector that would allow for ease in training. The total cost there is the $33,190. The benefit, because these staff all work in child protection, child welfare services, it is eligible for 50% federal financial participation. So the actual cost to the county would be the $16,595. These are items that I had not budgeted in the 2018 budget. However, these two particular units did earn some performance bonus funds this year that were also not budgeted in the budget. So I would use those performance funds to purchase this equipment for the staff and try to make that happen in 2018. I think it's a good investment. It will allow them, when they're out meeting with families, to have signature pads and just be much more efficient as they're trying to do their work. So, questions?
Yeah, Rhonda, so once you'd have these, then I'm assuming then that they would be part of the internal service fund for future, how would you?
Yeah, I would need to work with Tim on that. For the social service area, we budget $7,000 that goes over to the internal service fund for all of the social service staff, so it's probably about 70 of our staff. So we know that is not a lot of funds. They mostly use that for other PC replacements. So that's why this cost is not coming out of that internal service. I'm paying for that separately within the social service budget.
Right.
So I maybe want to work with Tim on, would that make sense? And then we could just increase that internal service line to plan for.
So much a year.
Yeah, right. So I haven't worked that through yet, but we definitely would need to do that with our laptops.
What happens to all the other laptops that they have now?
Right now, they don't have laptops, they just have their desk stations. So they have their monitors and keyboard and then their PCs. So what will happen is with the laptop, we will purchase docking stations. So they'll still have their larger monitors. So when they're in their office, they have the larger screens and they work on double screens in multiple systems. So they'll be able to come in and dock their laptop, work with their keyboard and their monitors, and when they're out in the field, unplug it, take their laptop with them. So it'll make them much more mobile. So eventually their PCs, when those are due for replacement, we won't replace those. We'll just use their laptops as their PC. So we won't be, doing two costs for replacements there.
Well, it seems to me that this is a way to make them more efficient as well.
Yeah, this is a long time coming, and we have had checkout laptops where we have a few and they can come and check them out, and that really does not work very well for those who work on computers. You set it up to your specifications, you know the look and the feel, and it's much more efficient. You're not switching users, logging in is much more efficient. So having them equipped with their devices makes a lot of sense.
I had a question about the performance bonus funds.
Yes.
What was the total of that?
99,000, little over 99,000, just shy of 100,000.
So then what do we do with the excess?
The other thing we've used those performance funds for is bringing in temporary staff when needed, variable hour staff. So, for example, over this last year, we've had a one, perhaps two, out on FMLAs.
Mm-hmm.
So we have brought some retired staff back in to help fill the gap. We've been bringing on some variable hour case aides, working with the college to come in and help some of the social workers work alongside them with those supervised visits and those kinds of things. So this is the third year of these performance funds. The first year, we did not earn them. There's two particular performance standards that they're looking at. The second year, we earned funds for the one performance and not the second. The last year, we earned for both performance measures. This next year, and we don't know if we meet those until February of the following year. So I haven't budgeted those because of the uncertainty of it. And then also knowing that it does allow some flexibility to bring in temporary staff when we need it.
Can I follow up to your question?
Commissioner Campbell.
In follow-up to Commissioner Mojo's question, the part-time wages that you might use, that you fund with that, they still show up though in your annual wages for comparisons for budget purposes.
Yes.
So in essence, those dollars are the expense dollars are budgeted.
Well, for the variable hour people, no. For example, when I submitted the 2019 budget, I don't have variable hour staff in there. Because a lot of times we don't necessarily know when we'll need them or how we'll need them. So neither that expense nor these performance funds are in the budget.
But but during the course of the year, you're paying variable hour wages.
Yeah.
What line does that go to comparison for the budget and year-to-date actuals?
Yeah.
There's got to be some way to.
Yeah, they get paid out of the salary line.
Okay.
So that's where they get paid, and then the performance funds are shown in a revenue line. It's just that neither are budgeted, so they.
So it would seem to me that if your variable hours are in your salary line during the course of the year, at the end of the year, we're using those numbers to determine the following year's budget.
No, I don't, for the salary lines, I budget that based on all of our full-time employees. That comes over on a spreadsheet from the auditors and human resources. We don't do it by actuals. It's actual employees, and it's figured out by their steps and their salary, and so that's based on actual employees hired. But what it doesn't account for is, and as you know, if somebody leaves in the middle of the year and then we have a position open for 2 or 3 months, and so it doesn't account for some of those kinds of things. But yeah, the salaries are all, I get a whole Excel spreadsheet of all of the staff and the anticipated steps and costs for benefits, and then that's what's plugged into the 2019 budget.
Okay.
Yeah. But, and I certainly can adjust the way that's budgeted in future years, if that would be helpful. Maybe just the uncertainty of those performance funds get a little difficult to know how to, I could put it in there, and then if we don't get it, so.
Okay. But you're
I'm still gonna use them.
You're gonna still have a variable hour need.
Yes.
So to me, it should be budgeted.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I can look at adjusting that for future years and making that more clear.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any further questions on the equipment proposal?
Well, I think it's a great idea that you're gonna be able to improve that along with the technology and get rid of the old desktop style computers so it's something we're replacing a little bit early with newer technologies, the way I look at it.
Right, and then what we will do is I'll work with the IT department I think the staff will keep their PCs until they're ready for replacement, and then we'll have them start using unless some of the staff want to move to that right away, and then we'll move their PCs to areas where we have older ones.
Sure.
So,
Well, also, thank you to your staff for earning that performance-based bonus, because I think that's, helps to pay for the needs, so
Yes.
thank you. Board's wishes.
If we need a motion on this, I'll make a motion to go ahead with it.
We have a motion to approve the request by Commissioner Gross and a second by Commissioner Haney. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. Thank you.
all right, thank you.
All right, item number 4 is the budget discussion and consideration to adopt the final levy and 2019 budget.
Morning, Madam Chair, again,
Good morning.
Commissioners. As you recall, last Thursday, we met with the board meeting for our Truth in Taxation. That's really was a culmination of a lot of work that started back in May with our department heads establishing their budgets and going through with Lori and this commission as far as where we would like to be. We did have some citizens that did come to our meeting last week and spoke publicly. Unfortunately, what they spoke on had to do with their evaluations, and there was no feedback actually on our budget. And so, therefore, this morning, at the end of the meeting, the board requested that Lori bring forth a resolution for discussion for this morning and the budget. So we have 2 action items before you this morning. And so the first one is Resolution 2018-39, which is our tax levy, which is $32,695. Oh, excuse me, it was 19.
Well, but and the budget.
And the budget, excuse me. It's $32,695.92.
$921.
$921, jeez. Thank you. And so that we would have, bring that forward for the board for discussion and potential motion.
I do want to clarify too, while there was some confusion in terms of valuation versus budget, there were comments from citizens about budgets that are expanding and the increasing in taxes, whether that be valuation or a budget. You know, I think that I appreciate the fact when citizens do say, caution us about how we spend their hard-earned tax or hard-earned dollars, and so I just want for the minutes to show that there were questions or comments on both. Board's comments? Yep, Commissioner Campbell.
Lori, when we, back when we were working on the correctional facility and law enforcement center, and part of our long-range plan for the payment of that was to use 75% of the retired debt that was freed up. That, we're still
We're still
leveraging
budgeting for that.
We're
Actually, we did budget for 100%.
Okay, yeah, but 25 was reserved for maybe other things that would give us some flexibility.
Yeah, but
I
that
just
is
wanted to make
okay.
sure that's in here, so one thing I neglected to ask you during the course of the budget process, and I just wanted to make sure that, in my mind, that it was there, so.
Yep, that is it there.
Okay. And then, Commissioner, in terms of one of the areas that we also received some concerns on, or I got a couple of calls on, was on the watershed tax going up, or the special tax going up, and it's my understanding in talking with Stephen that was, that and the HRA was all in one line item? Is that
Right,
correct?
the
Is
special
it-
taxing district line on the
Yeah.
truth and taxation notices
Yeah.
is made up of the watershed and the HRA.
But the HRA doesn't show up.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's just
so-
one line item.
So
it's
there was a
combined.
lot of people who thought that their watershed tax went up 100%.
Right, so it was almost doubled, and that is, I probably got, 15 phone calls,
Yeah.
and 14 were regarding that line item.
And
even though
it
it's
wasn't
just
really the
one item.
watershed, it was a combination of, because we did that
Right.
special levy for the HRA.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just want, again, to make public awareness of that's, okay. I would move approval of the 2019 proposed tax levy and budget.
We have a motion to approve the items by Commissioner Campbell, a second by Commissioner Gross. That includes the 2019 budget and Resolution 2018-39. Further discussion? Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you for your work in getting this together for us.
Thank you.
So who's representing what, 3 point? And down.
3.64.
3.64.
Okay. All right, Rob and Kevin, are you guys ready?
I am.
Okay, we'll take you first.
All right.
Our engineer's not here yet. We have your packet.
Okay.
Good morning, Rob.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, first of all, thank you for the invite to be here and for making time on the agenda for me. The intent of today is to just provide the board with some information about the Red Board and who we are, how we function, how we work with our member watershed districts, and how we go about doing the things we do with our member watershed districts. And I do have Kevin Root in the background here. If there's a question that's specific to Kevin, if there's something that needs some additional clarification, he'll likely jump in.
Okay.
So just some brief history about the board. We were formed back in 1976 as a result of several years of flooding prior to 1976. And I know some of this might be repeat to at least maybe a couple of you. I was at some of the AMC district meetings this past spring in Ada, Fergus Falls, and then farther north. So some of it might be repeat, but it'll do the job. So originally, the main focus of the Red Board was just strictly flood control. And over time, in the early 90s, that mission did change a little bit to incorporate natural resource enhancements and water quality. So some of those legislative changes just allowed the Red Board to focus on a lot of other things other than just flood control, including sedimentation, water quantity, water quality, education and outreach, research, and a number of other things. And you do know that we do have that taxing authority that's been there since 1976. And basically how it works is with that levy, funds go into the auditor's office at the county level, and then funds are distributed back to the local watershed district and the Red Board. And I'll provide a little bit more detail a little bit later here. So these are just the supporting objectives of the Red Board and the principal objective. And I did touch on some of those, but there are 11 supporting objectives and that principal objective that really helps support the main mission of the Red Board. And so this is just a map illustrating on the left, we have 21 counties in the Red Board's boundary. And the highlighted ones in green I've visited thus far in 2018. So I'm about 30% done with my county visits. And then the map on the right just illustrates all the watershed districts, and we currently have 7 member watershed districts. There are 4 watershed districts that are not part of us, and then you'll note that, of course, that Otter Tail watershed area is not an organized watershed district at this point in time. So just a little on who the Red Board is. So of course we're those 7 watershed districts. So my board is made up of 7 managers from each of those watershed districts. And we do have staff, including myself. I have an executive assistant. We do have a legislative liaison that works on, of course, legislative issues down in St. Paul. We also have a joint position that we've had many years with the Minnesota DNR, and that's our Red River Basin Coordinator. And that individual helps the Red Board work on projects from a technical standpoint. And we've been doing that, as I mentioned, for several years. We also have a technical advisory committee that's comprised of some engineers that advise the board on technical issues. And then, like all the other watershed districts, we do have that legal counsel and our auditing firm and some of the other folks that we need to do our day-to-day work. And then we do have that mission that's popped up there too. That just illustrates that we're focused on flood control, including beneficial use of water in the Red River Basin. And let's see. Okay. Just briefly on how we're organized, again, like many local units of government, we have several internal committees. And we've really gotten back to the committee process and having our committees do a lot of the tough work so that when they come to the full board, the board can make well-informed decisions because they know that that local, or the committee has done the work and worked with staff and other experts. The Red Board also has representation on several external committees. And a couple I want to highlight would be the Drainage Work Group, which is just a statewide group of folks that come together. They're recognized by the Minnesota legislature, and they advise the legislature on potential changes to the drainage law. And so the Red Board has representation on that. I know you're familiar with the Red River Basin Commission. We do have membership on that. And then we're the 50% of the Red River Retention Authority. And there's other boards listed there too. I won't go into any great detail on those, but I think it's important to note that the Red Board does function and cooperate, and we're partnered on a lot of these different boards. So just a little bit on some of the services that we provide to our member watershed districts. I won't go into all these, but it's one thing that the board has really tried to stress with our member watershed districts is the services that we provide and the communication that we're working on with and between our member watershed districts. And I think one of the key things is just a unified voice for Northwest Minnesota and our member watershed districts, and some of the work that we're doing down at the legislature. Excuse me. So about a year and a half ago, the Red Board started looking at strategic planning process and was starting to think through restructuring and reorganizing. And so last year, just looking at this slide, it's broken into two phases. So phase one, real simply, it was just hire some staff, get into temporary office space, and then ultimately some permanent space. And so for the most part, that phase one is done. And now phase two is really getting at, looking at getting input from our member watershed districts, partners, and other organizations that are out there. And so we started doing that last March at our annual conference that we have with the Flood Damage Reduction Work Group. And then just about a month ago, we sent a questionnaire out to all watershed districts within the Red Board's boundary. And so we want input from all those watershed districts to help the Red Board formulate how do we move forward in the future. Should our mission change? Should the principal objective change? Or should some of those supporting objectives change? So those watershed districts have until the end of this month to get us that input. And then likely after the first of the year, my board will start taking a look at that input. Excuse me. So one of the big things we focused on.
Can I interrupt? For
Oh,
a
sure.
second?
Sure.
So the questionnaires that you've sent to each of the member watersheds, you'll get a list of responses from all those. Can we request that? I'd like to see what your questions are and what the responses are from the Buffalo Red River Watershed District.
Yeah, we can work with you on that.
Be able to read those.
Sure.
Or even, I think, the wild rice as well.
Yeah, and the wild rice.
Wild rice
They're
is
both in
in
the
the county as
county,
well.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I would be happy to work with you on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So one of the things we've really focused on is responsiveness and just being, number one, responsive to our member watershed districts, but then also local units of government, especially county commissioners and cities and townships. And that responsiveness is focused on transparency and fiscal responsibility, outreach and education. Again, those services that we provide to our member districts that you saw just a couple slides ago. And then really having more communication about our legislative process. And I also wanted to touch briefly on just responsiveness to landowners. So there was a 3-year period where the Red Board did actually reduce their levy back to 75%. And that was the intent was to give some relief to farmers and landowners, especially with the way commodity prices have been and land prices and just the general ag economy. Now in 2018, moving forward into 2019, the levy rate is back up to 100%, and really gets to, because there's reduced state and federal funding, land acquisition costs are increasing over time, and just overall construction costs for water retention projects and other related environmental projects keep going up. So the board did revert back to that 100% levy going into 2019. Just briefly on transparency, just from a staff standpoint to our managers, We're definitely communicating more frequently and more often with our managers, whether it's through email, phone calls, face-to-face meetings. Our board does receive a meeting packet each month, about a week, 5 days to 7 days before a board meeting, just so that they can have the information and make more informed decisions. And one thing we've done, and I'm hoping you all get all of our email updates. I'm guessing you all see our meeting packets and post-meeting information. And if you're not, let me know, and we can definitely get you on our email distribution list. But I know you get plenty of paper, so I don't want to bury you with paper either. Then I think from a transparency standpoint too, for many years the Red Board was not located in a public office setting, but because we're a public entity, I think we need to be in a public setting, and my board did recognize that fact. So ultimately we'll be co-located with the Wild Rice Watershed District here in next year. And so like I said, we're just using more social media, different ways to get the word out about what we're doing and projects we're working on, initiatives that we're focused on, and just to be more transparent. So if you go on our website, you'll see our audit from last year, annual reports, and just a number of other things we're working on.
Rob?
Yes?
You have been much more transparent, and I think I've noticed in the last 18 months especially, I'm starting to see more and more communication, so I'm understanding more of what's
Good.
going on with your organization. In conversations that I've had with people connected with the Wild Rice Board, part of the concern is what does that future office space agreement look like? And I know you've identified for 2019 the goal is to stay co-located.
Right.
What is the thought process of how long or where you'll be?
Yeah, so I don't want to put Kevin on the spot, but I know that they've had a number of things in the works, and maybe I'll defer to Kevin to give that answer. Be better probably coming from him.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Kevin.
That's not a problem, I get paid for that. So where we're at currently is we have awarded a contract.
Okay.
We do have a 10-year lease agreement in effect right now that we signed back in April. And my board directed us to see if we could get more help from the Red Board.
Okay.
So currently, we're in the process, and tomorrow we will bring it up for discussion and a 5-year additional extension. So we're looking at a 10-year or 15-year lease total that we're
The Red Board.
with the Red Board to be co-located.
Okay, good.
And our hope is that within 6 months, they're moved in and we're done with the mess and mayhem of a remodeling project.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, that definitely clarifies. I know that was one thing, as you know, our law enforcement center, we have a long-term agreement with the city of Moorhead, and that really helped in conversations that we had, but I wasn't aware of your long-term lease that was signed, so thanks for clarifying.
All right. So this slide just illustrates some of the different things that we're using, or tools that we're using to do all that outreach. And I won't go into any detail on that, but pretty straightforward. But the key is we're using many other methods to get the word out and to share information. Just a little on fiscal responsibility. So looking back this last year, we did finally adopt an internal controls policy that merged our old treasurer's manual into the new internal controls document. We also have a credit card policy, and then we had our audit completed just as we have in many other previous years. The Red Board also took a look at its investments and financial holdings and made some minor changes to how we do banking and management of the money. We actually did an RFP this past summer to really get a better handle on interest rates and other banking services and so forth, just to get a good handle on what was out there. And I think overall, the board's really focused on minimizing costs, being more efficient, and again, being more transparent. Just briefly on our budget, you maybe saw something this summer on our budget, and this is how it's broken down from an operating standpoint. And the one thing I'll point out is that, maybe I'll just skip ahead to the next slide quick. These 4 programs in the past weren't necessarily included in our budget, and so it's just shy of $300,000 or a little bit under $300,000. But if you go back up into this slide, those are included under program funding. There's some other things included in there. But as time goes on, we're hoping as we continue with transparency and efficiency that we'll continue to see that budget drop. And I think it's important to note too that last year, or this year, we'll have expenses that we didn't have the year before, and we'll likely have some expenses next year that we didn't have this year. So it's going to take us a couple of years, I think, to get into more of a evening out of the budget. But just wanted to provide that information to you. So moving ahead here. So this slide just illustrates, it's a 5-year look back from 2013 to 17, just illustrating where the Red Board has expended the funds. And of course, the big bulk of it is the watershed district project funding, and that's monies that have gone directly back to individual watershed districts for projects. And then that program funding, that 15% there is the previous slide, those 4 programs that I illustrated. We also do work closely with the Flood Damage Reduction Work Group on the 1998 mediation agreement. And then we have some technical efforts too, and that would include our technical advisory committee, and then some of the technical studies and documents and initiatives that we work on would be incorporated in that technical efforts. And then this is just another 5-year look back, looking at where the money comes from. And you can see a bulk of it comes from primarily the 4 watershed districts there, including Boise Sioux, Red Lake, Wild Rice, and then the Middle Snake Watershed District. And then we have some other smaller sources coming from the other 4 watershed districts during that time frame. So I just wanted to go into a little bit on the Wild Rice Watershed District. And right now the Watershed District has 3 projects. The top 2, Goose Prairie and the City of Hendrum, they have started the process of going through the Red Board's step process or funding process. And that all started just this summer. And so now next week, the Wild Rice will be coming to the Red Board for another funding request for the Halston project. So you can see there's just under $2 million in total funding requests. Excuse me. And this next slide just illustrates, going back in time a little bit, some of the funds that have been allocated from the Red Board back to the Wild Rice Watershed District. And the list is not comprehensive by any means. We're still working on it. But it's been a little challenging kind of going back in previous records, both electronically and non-electronically, to find out what some of the funds that have been expended. So this is just a listing, and again, it's likely low. I would guess that as time goes on and we further refine the numbers, that number would go up. And then this is a slide just illustrating some of the projects. I would believe these are prior to 1998, prior to that mediation agreement. So the previous slide and the current slide that you're looking at are just over $5 million that has been sent back to the Wild Rice Watershed District. And then this slide I wanted to talk just briefly about too is the Red Board does a lot of things for the whole basin on the Minnesota side, and actually some of these things do kind of spill over into North Dakota. But this slide is illustrating that there's about $8 million that has been expended on different studies, initiatives, projects, project coordination, lobbying efforts, LIDAR, for example, educational projects such as the Riverwatch program, and so forth. And I know this number is definitely low. We've just started again looking at the numbers to really find out what kind of cumulative tally is out there for projects and initiatives that the Red Board's funded. So this number is definitely low, but these things do benefit all of our member watershed districts. And then moving forward, just another slide showing a number of other things that we don't have numbers on yet. So at some point in time, we'll have much better information coming forward. And so going into 2019, this is the levy that will come from the Wild Rice watershed to the Red Board. And this slide here, you've maybe seen this in a fact sheet, and I won't go through all the details here, but it's really a nice piece that I use when I'm out and about interacting with county commissioners or watershed district folks, or even just farmers and landowners, and just explains how the tax comes in, from the landowners and taxpayers. Goes to the county, of course, and then it's distributed back to both the Red Board and the local watershed district. And then I think it's important too to point out that there's other funds that the local watershed districts have, including their general funds and then also their ditch projects. So, excuse me. So this has been a pretty handy little document here. A little bit on our funding process. We do have a set of governing documents that lay out how we fund projects. And projects are initiated by the watershed districts, and they come to the Red Board for funding. And we do have those projects evaluated by our technical advisory committee, and we go through a whole process which I won't bore you with today. If you want more information on that, we can definitely get that to you in the future. And then we do provide that cost share, so we do have those monies going back to the local watershed districts. And I know you can't read this, but it's just for illustration purposes. This is our process for the most part in a flow chart, and it's laid out much more in our governing documents. But it does illustrate that we do have a process and that there's definitely a lot of thought that's gone into this process over time, and it's been refined over the years. And so we can be rest assured that we're following a process that's been vetted by the board, and that we're able to get the funds out to the watershed districts. Just briefly on investments made by the Red Board over the years. Now, I touched on some of this in some of those other slides, but you know, I think looking at regional flood control, we've done over 40 projects with our member watershed districts since 1976. And with the Rural Ring Dike Program, there's almost 300 ring dikes that have been put up with a number of the watershed districts. And I should say too, a lot of the funds that the Red Board is able to receive from other sources, we're able to leverage those with local funds, federal funds, and some of the other state funds. So I think it's been a good process. Just briefly here, this is current as of this summer. Another thing we're still working on, but it just illustrates that we have just under 200,000 acre feet in storage right now, and you can see some of the different funds that have been expended there over the years. So just a couple more slides here. So on our legislative process, in the past we did not have a legislative committee. So this last year we decided to form a legislative committee and to lay out a process so that we not only receive input from our member watershed districts, but have conversation and dialogue with them as the board is considering policy initiatives and funding initiatives for the next year. And so next week, we're pretty much done with this process here, but next week the board will finalize what our priorities will be for 2018 for both policy and funding initiatives. So we think it's a good thing that we're using a process like this in a legislative committee so that when we go to the legislature, we know we've had good communication with our member watershed districts. And then this slide just illustrates simply that over the years the state bonding funding has gone down. So as time goes on, it's a little more challenging on the funding side of things, but I think there's other things that we can look towards, such as some of the federal funds, other state funds, specifically Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council. I know some of our projects have had MnDOT funding and other types of funding sources. So you know, I think this maybe paints a tough picture, but I think with some of the other funds out there, there's some positive things going on.
Do you think that graphic, do you think that that's reactionary? You know, if you look at the years 2000, you know, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. That's right after, of course, now we've had a few drier years, and you see it's way down. So it's an indication that the bonding is reactionary as opposed to preventative.
Yep.
Right. And then what was it? 2 years ago, we didn't have a bonding bill either. It just didn't happen. So, but yeah, that's a great point. Definitely. You've probably seen this map. This is something that we've done in the past. It just illustrates a number of the projects that the watershed districts are currently working on, and they're at different phases in our funding process. And This map just illustrates projects that have been done. It's not complete, but if we start looking at other individual watershed districts or ring dikes or even soil water district projects that retain some water, I think there'd be many, many more dots on the map. So I guess looking ahead, we're going to continue to increase outreach and communication. We want to continue to build trust and foster relationships out there, and continue to be responsive not only to our members, but others out there, especially landowners, and just look towards new partners and initiatives. And I think I'll just call it good with that, and definitely appreciate the time.
Any questions for Robert Kevin? No questions. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks. All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Item number 5 are the highway department items. County engineer Dave Overbo and assistant Eric. Good morning.
Good morning. We've got 2 items on our agenda. First one being kind of happy to say we have got all of our approvals ready for our second letting on the Glendon project. This is one we let last May. The estimate was either a little lower, the bids were a little higher, kind of a combination of both. I think timing kind of got us a little bit there with federal aid approvals. We've since worked with the city engineer in Glendon, did a little redesign and did a little adjusting on our numbers to try to match what we're seeing in the markets. And we'd like to approve a letting on the 22nd of January at 9 a.m. for our urban reconstruct in Glendon.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Whalen,
Second.
second by Commissioner Haney. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes, thank you. The request for approval for the reducing the retainage on the final contract voucher.
Yeah, this is on our LRIP project out on Clay County 10. It was with Central Specialties out of Alexandria. All the work turned out fantastic. We got a really good job. It went fairly without a hitch there. We did have some language in there so that it wouldn't interfere with some of the weekends. You know, it was a pretty busy road. And I don't think we had any issues out there at all with impacting lake traffic or anything like that. What we'd like to do is reduce the retainage down to 0 because all the work is satisfactory. We've agreed on everything with the contractor. So we would like to cut a partial payment so we owe them nothing. And then we'd also like to get a second motion on a final contract voucher approval. And that dollar amount is listed at $922,945.05. And we'd like to forward both documents to the contractor. They have requested some additional funding for some milling. We don't agree with it. It's kind of a frivolous claim in my discussions and Eric's discussion with MnDOT. The other thing that we've had and heard from the contractor, very good contractor, we work well with them, but they do have a little history of not signing these final vouchers. And we kind of got into this with our County Road 18 project, where we have a retainage funds sit out there for months to almost over a year. And I think it's in our best interest to pay them what we owe them and agree on so that we don't sit on those dollars. And then if we do sit on a final voucher for a year, it doesn't hurt us. We don't have to pay any interest on that money owed to them. So absolute worst case scenario, if we do mediate and they negotiate some additional dollars, we can come back to this board and approve a second final voucher. It's a process that's been done before. But what we want to do is get them paid for what we owe them and kind of move forward. We haven't heard that there's going to be a claim, but like I said, they've requested some additional dollars that we don't agree with, and we just want to move forward.
My question, I know there'd been some issues on some approaches on that road. Are we satisfied with how those have all turned
We
out?
have Eric respond to that one.
Yep, so we did have one that had a big bump in it, and they did come out and repair that. And as far as punch list items, everything else has been cleaned up on the project, and yeah, overall, we're really happy with it, so.
Okay, thank you. So you're looking for 2 motions, retainage and then the final contract.
Correct, yep.
I'll make a motion on retainage.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gross to reduce the retainage from 5 to 0.
Second.
And a second by Commissioner Campbell. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. And then we need a motion on the final contract amount to be
So
approved.
moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whalen to approve. And a second by Commissioner Campbell. Further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Carried. Thank you.
One thing, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say briefly, you'd had me sign a letter.
That's correct, yes.
Can you update the board?
Yeah, so we've been working with multiple agencies on a bridge bundling project for our area, specifically targeting Red River bridges that are up and down the valley. So the one that impacts our county would be the one up by Georgetown, and it's kind of a joint project between, or would be a joint project. It's a jointly shared bridge between Cass and Clay counties. There's also bridges that are included in this bundling application for federal funds with Norman County, with Polk County, and the adjacent counties in the North Dakota side. So MnDOT has kind of taken the lead on putting this application together. A consultant was hired to put it together, and I asked our board through our chair if we could just put a letter of support together, and we did that, and I believe some of the other municipalities did the same thing. So essentially what we're looking for, I think it's about $25 million. Does that sound about right?
The whole package?
Yes. I think the whole application for, it's either 6 or 8 bridges in our region.
Or is it region, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of just, like I said, it's kind of up and down the valley. The Polk County Engineers is kind of the liaison between our group and MnDOT. Like I said, Dave Congo from MnDOT State Bridge is working with a consultant, I think it's called Baker International, and they're the ones putting this together, and it's kind of like a Tiger type grant. It's something that the Trump organization came out with, and it's kind of targeted as a bridge bundling project to do multiple bridges to have efficiencies and save on dollars. And you know, we're hopeful. We did go back out and do a little more investigation on the bridge last week. Eric met out there with our consultant from WSN to see if, just to make sure that all the bridge elements were properly inspected and coded. If it were more deficient, we wanted to make sure that we could list that. I think that would be a very good structure for us to replace. At some point, it's going to have to be replaced. So it's nice to see the cooperation between all the agencies, and so far I think that's moving forward, and I really appreciate your support and signing that.
All right, I just wanted the board to be updated on that.
Are
Commissioner
any of
Brooks?
these bridges involved in our 5-year plan, or is
No.
that's all different in addition?
Yeah, it's kind of their larger, bigger structures, I guess is kind of the way it was looked at in multi-agency type projects. It's not too far down the road. It's not, there was some bearing work that we did on there. On the North Dakota side, the rocker bearings started to tilt, and we lifted those up and straightened them out a couple years back. We used MnDOT's District 2 bridge crew to come help us with that. Like I said, it's to a point where it's, you know, it's starting to hit the radar, but we do have other projects in front of it. It's going to be a major, you know, be real similar to the Wall Street Bridge that we did back in 2005, 2006. So we wouldn't probably have near the aesthetical things that one came with, but it would be kind of similar. It might be even a little bit longer, but.
What about the Broadway Bridge? Is there something going on there too that we were discussing?
Yeah, that's the one that we're doing the study on. We've got some slope failures there, so we've got Braun and SRF hired between Cass and actually I think it's the city of Fargo and Clay County are kind of the owners on that one. So we're working with them, and it's about an 18-month project, and they do a lot of different readings to try to see how the failure is progressing. I should have information on that somewhere in the next 6 to 8 months, I think.
Any follow-up? Commissioner
I
Campbell?
follow up to Commissioner Gross's question. These projects, it's a separate pool of money that we're going after. That's outside of what our 5-year plan projects are. So, you know, right, so that's a separate pool.
I think it's a 90-10 split, so the 10% of the project would be shared 50-50 between the 2 counties.
Dave, yesterday I had the opportunity to visit with Dr. Zimmerman a little bit about the future project that they're looking at for 11th Street North.
Sure.
And of course, 11th Street North going up to Center Avenue is County Road.
Yep.
And I certainly am going to be a real advocate for that project being completed. And I think Dr. Zimmerman had mentioned, that MnDOT is really looking at this one as a real positive project. And he did say that the county is going to have to be involved in this because of our ownership in it. And, you know, I would encourage you to, you know, stay in contact with Bob Zimmerman on that project. And anything that, as far as I'm concerned, anything that the county can do in terms of resolutions of support or something, we should be doing that. You know, and so if you can kind of keep that on your radar and working while they're working on it. I know right now they're looking at funds for the preliminary design and all that type of thing to determine what properties are going to be impacted or may have to move or what have you. And the sooner we can get that information to move this thing forward, the better off we are. So.
I believe I believe there's been a consultant hired, is that correct, Eric? To do some of the environmental documents. Eric went to that kickoff meeting last week.
Okay.
So they've got us in the loop on it, and I think what we'll plan on doing is maybe trying to periodically bring back information to the highway committee on the progress and where things are at, and then correct if we do need any letters of support down the road when we get to a funding stage. We'll certainly.
And I would certainly suggest that we keep Nathan involved too from MnDOT.
Sure.
He's got a local knowledge on this thing.
Yep.
So.
He's in a part of the committee as well, and I think they actually should find out on their build grant here within a few weeks.
Okay.
So they applied for a build grant last year, and
right. Well, if you just, I just think that at any time, you know, and going back to the letter that you had Jenny sign there, she showed me that letter while we were at AMC, and I agreed that it was a good thing to send. And I didn't know if there was a time period on it or whatever, but any time that we can do letters of support where we can actually have the full board's resolution behind it is always really is a good thing too. But
I think the problem with that is the deadline was that
and
day.
They wanted it that Monday,
right. And that, you know, so that's why I'm glad that Commissioner Mojo signed that, you know, because of the deadline. But anytime we can get the full board to do it, I think we should be doing that. So. Thank you.
Maybe the last thing I want to just mention is with regard to the Glendon project, there was a considerable amount of the railroad work that was done last year. I believe, was it over $500,000?
yeah, pretty much 100% of all the work at the tracks has been done. So next year we just got to pay up to it.
Yeah, so kind of a nice thing. You know, that was a big hurdle on the front end to get to the letting, and now that that work's been done, I think that'll just help with things this coming year. So.
Yeah. So did they get paid for that time? Whoever did that work, they got paid for it already?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the railroad had to coordinate it all. They didn't do all the work. They had some contractors and things, but they've been working through Eric, and it was at maybe 5 or 6, maybe even 7 different partial payments that we worked with the railroad. And there's according to the MOU, there's a cost split on that with the city and the county. So we have paid, correct? We paid for that work.
Any other questions? Commissioner Campbell?
That project was brought up last Thursday morning at our Clay County Joint Powers Agreement, and there was quite a presentation given to us by the DGF school superintendent. And, you know, and I think obviously that was a big focus was on that. Then there was also an awful lot of discussion regarding the 7th Street issue that was east and west that you brought to our highway tracking committee meeting several times, and you know, and I told them that, you know, that we really don't, you know, because it's not a county road, you know, but I think they would certainly like to see the extension of that. I don't know where the communication has gone with that. If there's any chance that we could assist them with local roads to improvement options there, or safe routes to school, you know, are there any of those things any of those things that we could assist them on?
We had a couple meetings with Mr. Tygeson, and I believe we did share that the local road improvement we would support that as maybe one of the strongest projects in our area on something like that. I believe the last meeting we had, it was kind of expressed to them that we felt it would be best to include that in their building project to somehow. I don't know if it can or not, but I
don't think they are including it. I think they said it was a separate deal. So.
I know they're working on right-of-ways and potential donations from the landowners along there. And if our project wasn't federal aid and having so many hoops to jump through, we could maybe look at adding as an alternate an extension with our large project that we have, but being that it's federal aid, it really muddies things up and would almost certainly delay it.
Is there anything, you know, I know we have restrictions too in terms of even being able to have county funds, even if there was a turnback thing or something that would go on, we don't even have do we have a connection thing where 7th Street could be, we have, what's the name of the road you're doing, the major road?
That's County Road 19. or
That's
Park
19,
Avenue,
and then
yeah.
17 is on the other end.
Yeah.
So,
As far as a county road project, I would say there'd be no issues if it were to be considered a county road. Even if it was a state aid road, I guess it would meet that criteria too. It'd be state aid connections on each end.
yeah, I just don't know if it's worthwhile to research all those things or not. I just think we should look at I see there's a potential really good development opportunity for Glendon, you know, if that road were connected.
He put together a kind of a very preliminary draft estimate on that. Do you remember what the dollars, it's about not quite a half mile, maybe a third of a mile, or?
Yeah, I can't remember the number. It all depends on the typical section the city wants through there. And I think the last conversation I had with Brian is when the LRIP grant solicitation comes out, which could be any week now, we're gonna help them get that rolling and see where it goes.
I would think that, is that distance comparable to what we just got for the local road improvement deal for Old Port?
I think it'd be shorter than that. It might be real comparable to the one at Saban though.
Okay.
And that was about 223,000 that Saban got. Can I mention one last thing? Just a real short tidbit. You talked about the build grant that the city of Moorhead's working on, or that they applied for on the 11th Street. We do also have one out there for the Glendon project through our lobbyist, Barb Brody and Associates. So maybe, it is still hanging out there that our application's in the pot as well. So
Find out soon. I think we asked for a little over 4 million, so it'd be nice.
we'll let you know if we hear anything.
Thank you. Committee reports, Commissioner Campbell?
Yes, I think because we had a late meeting last week, the only meetings that I have to report on is what we had yesterday, and that was our correctional facility and law enforcement center and our regional juvenile center. And on the jail and law enforcement center, really the only thing that came up and that was actually on the LEC, there are 5 interview rooms that they have at the LEC, and they're learning that there's some real sound issues with those rooms, that they can be in one room, and this is something that maybe an attorney would really, you could possibly use it to your advantage, I suppose, but where they can actually hear what's going on in the next interview room. You know, so they're looking at some potential resolution to that, being some sound boards that would go, right, Stephen, that would go around those rooms. And so we told them to basically to go to work on getting that done.
Yeah.
So other than that, you know, and you can see what's happening now with the demolition. I think what's going on with the tearing down, there's about another week of that, and then what'll come in is the piers coming in, where they do the pounding in for and then the foundations will start shortly after that. We'll see the phase 2 starting to go up. And then on the regional juvenile center, they're really, that's just coming right along, and there's no hiccups at this point. There is going to be, when I talked about before, under the contingencies, there was a significant one that is more than Commissioner Whalen and I were authorized through this board to be able to approve. And so that's going to be coming, a change order is going to be coming next
session, yeah.
Next Tuesday on that. And I think for Commissioner Haney and Commissioner Gross, there's some things that they're part of this big one. It's a $96,000 deal that was unexpected or unanticipated, but a lot of it includes improvements for the Family Service Center. So I'm talking, and I think Lori will fill you in, but, so part of those dollars we're gonna be requesting you to look at through your capital improvement side to fund because it benefits the Family Service Center. And I think you'll find Joe has some of them that were built-in projects already into the capital improvement plan, so. So right now it's showing it's coming out of contingencies for the juvenile detention project, when in fact some of it was already intended to be on the capital improvement side, that benefits the Family Service Center. But you'll hear about that. I think you guys are meeting next Monday or something.
We have on Monday, we're meeting, yes.
Yeah, okay. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Haney.
I don't have anything.
Thank you, Commissioner Gross.
I went to a meeting last night at Hitterdall for the wellhead, and I stayed for the city council meeting, and the wellhead thing went very well. They got one of the best ratings, I guess, in probably the state or nation as far as water, so I would recommend anybody who wants to move to Hitterdall or buy some water from up there, go for it, you know. It's just, I mean, they got about the lowest rating that's ever been done, I guess, according to the person who gave the presentation, so it was a very good report for them. Other than that, they had, they worked on their levy and improved their levy, and they're caught up with their bills and stuff like that, and they're doing a good job up there, so that's the only meeting I had, other than, I guess the going away party, or whatever one you want to call it, for more council members, just attended that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wayland.
I also had the detention meeting, and Commissioner Campbell covered that on the construction project. And then I had a Greater Fort Worth EDC Executive Committee meeting last week, and most of that meeting was spent discussing the plans that they're working on to increase private, the number of private investors in the EDC. So hopefully that'll go well over the next couple of years. That was it for me.
Thank you, and I don't have any reports. Steve?
Madam Chair, I had a number of internal meetings on Friday and Monday, in addition to the owners' meetings for both the Juvenile Center and the Law Enforcement Center and Corrections Facility. I also met with Greg Stroman from the Clay County Trail Alliance, and received an overview of that organization and our sponsorship. One of the things I did want to mention, I did with the adoption of the levy and the budget, speaking with Kevin Kassenberg from Soil and Water, they have been able to been available for some additional grant dollars that we've been a part of in different projects for the last couple of years, and it appears that money is going to be available again next year. He would just ask that we have that in the minutes, that our budgets, the budget, actually Dave and Eric have money set aside for those projects to leverage those dollars. So
Thank you for bringing that up. I apologize. I forgot about that.
And just lastly, I did send the article out to each of you, but I think it's worth mentioning. Minnesota Public Radio did an article on our new corrections facility. An old jail is now a leader in inmate mental health was the title, and focused on talking with Julie and Rhonda, and then Lakewood Mental Health. And so I think that would be something good, a good link to add to our new website. So. And that's been picked up by a variety of different sources across the state of Minnesota. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Steve, do you have anything? All right. Anything else? No, we're adjourned.